Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I would like to share with you some of the conclusions and ideas of our discussion here. I also want to point out that it's been a very inspiring week, and I want to also highlight the level of organization and the possibility of networking that all these dialogues and the conclusions that I will be sharing with you allowed. So let me please start with a quick reflection. I'm here because I'm right now running a national water plan in Argentina. It's one of the main components of the new government of Argentina. It has started last December. So many of the discussions that I will be sharing with you and the conclusions are going to be very much useful to the implementation and delivery of our program in Argentina, which is very much aligned with the topics of this week here. So first of all, I would like to say that in our discussions, in the meetings that I was taking part of, and also in the ideas that the other people that were working as secretaries of these discussions shared with me, it was very, very clear that in order to achieve economic growth, water is a key issue. But also that we have to come up with a more integrated approach on how we deal with the water, and basically that we have plenty of information, but many times that information doesn't translate into key solutions and into useful policies. If we are very concrete, some of the discussion took us to the idea that when you don't have water, of course, in a proper approach and available, then you cannot be competitive. In Argentina, it's a good case of that. I will not go into details, but recently, in the last few years, we have had, and we are facing right now, mainly due to El Niño in some parts of the country, but also due to the lack of the water in the glaciers in the area of the Andes, and also in several issues of highly polluted water basins in highly populated places of the country. Some of the challenges are very clear. So as we know, we have the goals, and one of them is pointed towards water on a very straight basis, but as it was said here, one of the discussions took us to the conclusion that actually all of them are very much related to water, and water is a central issue. So I'm very glad to have heard just right now the level of attention that there will be to water in Marrakesh in the near future. And this is also some of the key points that were in our discussions during this week. So the second thing that I want to highlight is some of the key issues that we thought the World Water Week was playing and was making available to all of us. One of them is that we need to move into policy. In many senses, as I said before, there is already an agreement on what it is that has to be done, but not a delivery of that. So we tend to agree on the idea that we know that some concepts are key concepts and that we have to change the reality, but we are not very keen on achieving that. So we think that sharing information and also being as concrete as possible in that sense, this is to share what are the wrong experiences, how some of the policies failed, is also very, very useful. The other thing is that taking all these approaches to the different regions, we have to allow for different meanings. And not everybody has the same way of solving issues. So when we compare the different regions, there were different ideas on how to solve them. Of course, the main focus was Latin America, Asia, and Africa in all these conversations. And they face common problems, as you see here, but we agreed that those common problems turn out to be different challenges. Improved sanitation, as you see here, and wastewater treatment is is one of the key points in Latin America, which is a highly urbanized continent, as you know, but it is different, the approach that you need in Africa and Asia, where on-site sanitation and sludge management turn out to be key issues. All sectors require reform in order to achieve those targets. So we agreed, for the most part, that the political support, let's say, behind these changes is also key. And again, the issues that we discussed at Interregional session on the policy challenges of implementing the Goal 6 were central. So finally, we wanted to address that. Of course, we want to go for more basic services, but also we need water treatment, we need water security. It is water resources management as a whole which has to be changed. Public sector alone cannot achieve those developments, so here comes one of the main conclusions. We need the private sector to take part into the implementing and delivery of the sector. That is also very, very clear in the Argentinian case, where the plan that I am running is one of the main plans. Probably it is 1/3 of the investment in infrastructure in the country. But we know that if we want to achieve the goals, that is not going to be enough. And so the challenge is, how do you put together public-private partnerships so that the private sector can be a member of that, avoiding some of the failures that some of them were significant in the past. So we need to foster, as it says there, the businesses around the water and sanitation as a general, and to make it more clear. Then the other key conclusion, a second key conclusion, was that we need to move away from a linear approach. We need to be able to recognize complexity and to move into the circular economy. That is also a big challenge. Our governments are not designed to do that. They are designed in silos components, and it is not that easy to have the people to work together on policies that may be useful to allow the private sector to do some of the circular economy, but only if you set the rules and the proper rules to achieve that. And a third key conclusion is that we need to move into more of a green infrastructure approach. And we do know far more on nature than we used to know in the past. Also, there are plenty of technologies, mainly digital and Internet of Things and monitoring technologies, that let you to dealing with the variability and uncertainty of nature. But once again, you need the institutions and the rules and the policies in order to do that. Very quickly, I want to share with you the main ideas of the Argentinian Water Plan, just as a case in which all these discussions can enrich the policy. So we have a plan in 4 main components. One of them is water supply and sanitation. So our goal is to reach 200% of water supply and 75% of sanitation. Argentina has now 80% of water supply and 50% of sanitation. And in order to do that, the plan requires an investment of $21 billion. The second point of the plan is to adapt the territory to the climate and to the climate variability and to the climate change. So Argentina is a very extended land, as you know, 5 million square kilometers. And it has all kinds of heterogeneities and diversities in the water access. Right now we have around 7 million hectares underwater, very productive area in the Pampas due to El Nino, but at the same time we are lacking water in several of the cities that are right next to the Andes. So our plan implies a $10 billion investment in order to do the infrastructure and also the technology to get to the data and to do the modeling and to be able to have early warning systems and so on. The third one is to do multi-purpose, large-scale infrastructure. And Argentina has not done that for a few decades. There are 2 or 3 of them that are key for developing, particularly in the arid and semi-arid area, and we are starting them. And a fourth one is to basically enlarge the agricultural area of the country by developing infrastructure in the boundaries of the agricultural area. And we are facing a challenge of around 800,000 hectares, which implies almost $4 billion US dollars in order to do so. So if we want to do that, and this is a priority for the current government, we need to take into account several of the ideas and discussions that we were paying attention to during these days. So let me just come to an end with what I think are the three main concepts of our discussions this week. Of course, we are working around the goals for 2030, and I just wanted to share with you some of the views of all of our discussions from my point of view, considering the Argentinian case. Three key issues for me are outcomes of our week of work here. One of them is that we need to move into the circular economy. That is not easy, but it is key. And we need to do that sharing the possibility of including green infrastructure. So key issue here is how do you put together policies and frameworks so that green infrastructure is actually a good business and can be taken up by the private sector. A third one is this thing that I just said. Governments are not going to be enough. So even though Argentina has water as a key priority, if you run the numbers, you realize that governments are not going to be enough. And a fourth one has to do with us. What are you going to do to make it possible? Thank you.